Episode 2 of You Season 5 begins with Joe cleaning up Mooney's. He feels like himself again, but Kate wants his murder fanfic burned as nothing should trace back to them. He understands her concern but thinks his old self deserves better and hides it in the cage. At the bookstore, Bronte is whimsical and energetic, and Joe thinks she's flirting. She thinks he's rich and doesn't understand real people problems like rent. He increases her pay so she can find a place instead of sleeping at the store or crashing at her ex's. She teases him for being a trophy husband but takes the money all the same. He finds her captivating but also a little frustrating. While cleaning up, she moves the shelf in front of the basement door and he warns her to stay away. In school, Henry gets into a fight with Gretchen, which happens to be Reagan's daughter. He breaks her nose and the teacher wonders if he's actually violent. Joe gets defensive, but it doesn't help Henry as Reagan plans to press charges and have him expelled. For now, Henry is suspended and Joe takes him to the store. A curious Bronte is busy picking the lock to the basement, which she hides from him. She banters with Henry, who likes The Hobbit, and she claims she likes bad boys and then looks at Joe, which has him overthinking things. Alone, he tries to understand why Henry punched Gretchen. Turns out, Reagan has been telling everyone that Henry's mother is a killer. Joe is furious, but promises to tell him about love one day. Kate has a game plan though, as she invites Reagan to dinner as an olive branch. It is anything but a treat though, as Reagan brings Maddie to back her while Teddy shows up to support Kate. Dinner is super awkward as Reagan gets to the point. She will not press charges if Kate pays for Gretchen's nose job, sends Henry to a different school and puts him in therapy. Finally, she wants an apology from Joe and Kate that they have failed as parents. For Henry's sake, they grovel, but it's just not enough. She also wants Kate to step down as CEO. She doesn't buy Kate's self-righteous act and thinks she's actually just using the company. An angry Joe confronts her about her gossiping. However, she wasn't talking about love. She believes that Kate actually killed Bob. Teddy claims he has footage of Bob's suicide, which he has erased. Reagan doesn't buy it as she recalls their father's enemies turning up dead and him praising Kate for her killer instincts. Henry happens to have been eavesdropping and throws a knife at Reagan. Chaos ensues and Joe kicks everyone out. At the store, Bronte breaks in and is in awe of the rare books in the cage. She even takes photos of them, but she winds up locked in and panics as she's actually claustrophobic. Alone, Joe wants to kill Reagan, but Kate refuses. On top of that, she agrees that Henry actually does need therapy. Joe is furious once again, believing that Reagan is poisoning everyone around him. He insists that Henry is fine and just needs to be loved, and all of this goes back to triggering his childhood memories of his abusive father. Suddenly, he notices the motion sensor alarms in the cage. He finds Bronte acting shifty and he realizes that something is wrong. She finally confesses that she has a lot of debt and she planned to sell the books. He fires her and she claims he won't understand as a rich person. He frees her after this, but before she leaves, she comments that his murder fanfic is actually pretty good. However, the serial killer protagonist has no flaws. Having had enough, Joe lashes out about his horrible and abusive childhood. She's glad to see the real him and ends up walking off. Meanwhile, Kate gives Teddy Bob's board seat. She's curious about the CCTV footage and he claims he was bluffing. Onto the Reagan situation though, Joe decides to kill her first and tell Kate later. He's sure she will forgive him, and that night he watches Reagan engage in roleplay with her husband, Harrison, in Kate's office. Joe knocks her out and locks Harrison in a storage room. He puts her in the cage and writes about it. He realizes that Bronte is right about his writing and calls her back. They apologize to each other and he gives her back the job. To help, he also lets her crash at his old apartment upstairs. She looks nervous and finally reveals that she knows about the Conrads' book on how he had caged them. He smoothly lies that he told the couple about how Mooney used to punish him by putting him in the cage, and they used it for their own fame. He also assures her that he is not romantically interested in her and she acts relieved. He goes home afterwards and finally tells Henry that while Love was sick, he isn't. However, Joe realizes that the kid needs help and convinces him to at least try therapy. Kate looks on and then apologizes for last night. They agree that Reagan needs to be stopped, but his smile falls when she claims it will be legally. She regrets Bob's murder and calls it a moment of weakness. She wants him to have a clean conscience for Henry's sake, and Joe claims he does too, since he only kills for the right reasons. This scares her, and he realizes that she never did see the real him, which means he can never tell her about Reagan. And at the end of episode 2, Reagan is pressing charges and he's confused. He runs to the cage and sees that his captive is none other than Maddie. Turns out she was having an affair with Harrison and it looks like he kidnapped the wrong twin. So episode 2 brings a whole new set of problems for Joe to deal with, and if there was any question whether this season would be a comedy of errors, it's now solidified with the kidnapping of the wrong Lockwood twin. Whoops. But since Maddie is complicit in Reagan's scheming, it doesn't look like she's going to be making it out alive anytime soon. We knew trouble was brewing with Bronte, and she seems to be walking a fine line here. She isn't as naive as one may think at first glance, especially if her shiftiness around Joe is a giveaway. She knows something is off about him, and it's doubtful that she bought his story of the comrades using his trauma for their book. Teddy is another curious character here that is definitely worth keeping an eye on despite his limited screen time. He knows Reagan wouldn't buy his story of watching and erasing the CCTV footage, so why does he say it anyway? But by saying it, he wins over Kate and he gets a seat on the board to boot. Joe better be careful or Teddy might just trip him up. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.